Every now and then, a total legend comes into this world by which to prove that a dream is more than just a dream, but is a raison d'etre, a vocation, a way of life, a reason for being, something more than just nothing. And in creativity, many genii throughout history have left a legacy of culture into the thinking and the association we have intellectually with reality via the medium of the visual or written or musical arts. The senses are festooned in the wonders of their creation, and that is why we all love the arts and music, because they are sensually exciting, because we are sensual creatures, and we have evolved to a level where we're so good at creating advanced sounds or advanced visuals, moving visuals, even 3D computer generated quasi-physical graphical objects in a holographic medium is now within the realms of human understanding and achievement. And before that, when I was a child, I always had an enthusiasm for ideas, good ideas. I only the other day learnt that in Marvel there's a place called the House of Ideas, which is where the one who is above all lives. And I love this notion of the House of Ideas. I like to think I live in the House of Ideas. This home is usually called the Star Temple, but the House of Ideas is exactly the same sort of thing that I would like to call my place, because I do live in the House of Ideas, in that my mind is a bit like the TARDIS. It's not a big house on the outside, but inside it's massive, right? And so here we are. This is what I've had on my possession for a while, ever since I was a boy, because I made this when I was a kid. Let's see if it says the year. I'm not sure it does. No, sadly, it doesn't have the year. But this was seminal. This is like, if I had a Super Doodles museum, which I hope to do in the future. This is the Low Bots and the High Bots by Click, which was my nickname at school. And it's two little leaflets about the characters that I was creating back then. So one could argue the Super Doodles are really in their genesis of genius, coming up to 50 years old, even though no one's really heard of them yet. And here we have a list of names and their attributes and their logo and what they're good at. So we've got Fluff, who's a field marshal, Thump, who's a general, Humphrey, Attack, Main, I think I'm trying to spell manoeuvre but doing a terrible job of it, and Engineer, Scumph, who's a spy and main pilot for the Blunderbuster, which was the name of their craft, because I probably didn't know what a blunderbuss really was back then. But I did, I just heard the name, thought it was funny, and made it the name of their ship. And I made all these characters out of corks, because one lesson with Mrs. Hooley, who was, God rest her soul, beautiful woman teacher, she told us how to make these little toys using corks and cloth and art instruments. So the cork is the body of the person, and you design it so it's a little chap with cloth and, I don't know, wool or whatever you want to use, but they're little characters, and I made loads of them. I really went to town on this module, and I was industrious at the age of 8 into the low bots and the high bots, and I had like 20, 30, 40 of these characters. And I built them a base and a landing craft called the Blunderbuster, seemingly. And they lived in the control tower. There's a little diagram here. I'll show you in a sec. We'll maybe go into close up on this, but that's the small diagram. The actual thing was about that big. So it's clearly to scale, but the scale of the ratio is much smaller. And there are the characters: Fluff, Splitch, Thump, Smudge, Gumpy, Grumpy, Humphrey and Scumph, Yeah, I've really got a bit better at the names. They're all playing on a theme there. But then we've got the high bots. So they're the low bots. I would suggest they're the baddies. Right, but then the high bots, automatically we're looking at a grander scale yet. Okay, so we've got Frunts, Rambonic, Flonic, Shumfley, Blarminis. What was I thinking there? Torklop, Mistlchuck, Watnik, Probinic, Flinswift. Watnik and Probinic sound Russian. Bit worried about that. Blarminis, engineer spelled wrong. With an A instead of a double E at the end. Rambonic, general. When joined with Lowbots, he is sergeant. Ah, that's interesting. Frunts, field marshal. When joined with Lowbots, he is lieutenant. Spelled lieutenant, literally left. And here's a close-up, a schematic for all you fans out there who want to see this. Like there's two of you, I think. And there you've got a craft as well. It's called the they've got a wormatic spy made of felt. So there's one character not made of cork, but made of felt, called the wormatic spy. Called wormatic, and he's a spy. Complete felt, apparently, according to the diagram. And their ship is called the Sky Bloomer, for reasons that I don't know. Now here's something interesting. We have the legend written on the back, right? It was the Lowbots that made all ten of us, so we helped them to get Prof. Blitch, but us, the Highbots, we had our own problems. We used to be big robots about 50 years ago, but we were destroyed by a laser from a rock. We then stayed there in pieces for a long time, so when the Lowbots made us, we went to get that laser and the shooter. I remember I had that character. I made that character. He was a good one. He's one of the best ones, and he's here. And his name was Torplod. So Torplod has seemingly destroyed the 50-year-old big Highbots. Then the legend on the back of the Lowbots, I presume, is a bit different. One day in the 18th century, a Professor Blitch formed a Lowbot called Humphrey. Humphrey got treated badly, so he escaped and made his own Liberty, and formed 5 more Lowbots when he formed the 2 top rank ones, Fluff and Furrough. When they were scanning one day, they found some scrap metal and 10 soccer, so they built Coca. So they built the Highbots, 10 of them, and joined forces and called themselves the Hotbots. And now they set forth to destroy Professor Blitch. So Professor Blitch is a recurring character, clearly, in the Highbots and the Lowbots saga, which does stem from the 80s. These pieces of card are from the 80s, and they still hold up pretty well, don't they? Yeah, they made good paper back then, and good pens that don't evaporate, for want of a word, over time. What's the word for art disappearing after years in light? There must be a word for it, I don't know. I would look it up, but time is pressing. So there we are. That's the story of the Highbots and the Lowbots from the original ancient files so many years ago. And really the Super Doodles are a more adult continuing theme on what made me very happy when I was a boy. And what made me very happy when I was a boy was playing with toys, doing something creative, and having a genius idea to get inspired by and wrestle with and just work at, because I did that quite a lot in various ways, in various different means. But that was seminal. And so it's nice to share this piece of history with you, and I hope you haven't been too bored listening to me talking about this, because, you know, I think this is an interesting insight into the true psychology of people, in this case me, and how I have this thing with characters ever since I was a child going on in my head. Like there's almost like a conflict of, because is it a conflict? But is it a kind of conflict between all these multifarious characters? And maybe, just maybe, that's why I became schizophrenic. It's a theory. And I'm just putting it out there. You don't have to run away in fear. But it is interesting, isn't it? Very interesting.